the elderly, but they can happen to anyone. When an 8-year-old Edmonton boy suffered one, it put his family through unthinkable ordeal. As Carlisle Facette reports, Toby is now well on his way to recovery.
He's still some years away from getting behind the wheel of an actual hot rod, but Toby Lagrazon already has his sights set on something down the road.
Bugatti.
Bugatti? You gonna drive one someday?
Yeah.
His love of cars shining through nearly 2 years after a life-changing moment for him and his family.
And like stroke? What do you mean stroke? He's 8 years old. That can't be.
While riding his bike, Toby started throwing up and developed a severe headache. In the early days of the pandemic, his parents thought it was a virus.
Nobody has a stroke at 8 with no underlying condition.
It was indeed a stroke. Toby spent several days in limbo, but on Mother's Day 2020, he woke up. A blessing, no doubt, but the start of a long recovery.
Nothing was offered less than what he needed. And we're very thankful for that.
His parents say Toby's determination was clear once he got to the Glenrose Rehab Hospital, especially since only one of them was allowed to see him at a time because of the pandemic. Toby arrived in a wheelchair and roughly 6 months later, walked himself out.
That's such a blessing.
And started running.
I know, and then
So that was it. He just got up.
Motivating Toby along the way, the story of basketball player Corey Wiseman. He was a star in high school who suffered a stroke before his college career could take off. He survived and eventually returned to the court.
It's almost the same thing that happened to me.
Toby still deals with mental fatigue but attends school regularly. When he was nonverbal, he taught himself to sign, something his family have also taken up, but
They are not as good.
Toby's recovery has a ways to go still, and there have been bumps in the road, but every zoom along a couch cushion is a reminder of how far he and his family have come.
those little miracles that happen, it's almost like the lows didn't happen.
Carlisle Facette, CTV News, Edmonton.
Well, they say you should never meet your heroes, but for an Edmonton boy we introduced you to earlier this month, that couldn't be further from the truth. Carlisle Facette has more on the outpouring of support for the stroke survivor and the chance to meet his idol.
Look who is it?
Is that Toby?
It's been 2 long years for Toby Lagrazon recovering from a stroke he suffered at 8 years old. During his rehab, he was inspired by Corey Wiseman, who overcame a stroke in high school to play college basketball in the U.S.
Toby Wiseman makes the free throw and the crowd erupts.
They made a movie about it. Toby has seen it.
A couple times.
That might be an understatement.
I wanted to hop on here and just tell you I heard about your story and happy to hear that you're, staying so positive and working hard.
Toby is also an avid car enthusiast. When Sherwood Park Chevrolet got word of CTV's story about Toby, another surprise was in store. The lot was lined with sports cars. Toby had his pick. So how fast was the one he went for?
200.
This reporter can neither confirm nor deny that.
His smile, his laugh, everything whenever he hopped into a vehicle, it was phenomenal.
Toby struggles with mental fatigue and has lost dexterity in his formerly dominant right hand. Wiseman was happy to do the talking, offering perspective from his own recovery.
You need to, work really hard to force yourself to use your quote-unquote bad hand as much as possible so that it could just keep getting better.
Toby was a little starstruck at first, but that shouldn't last. In fact, his family and Wiseman hope to plan an in-person meeting someday down the road.
You're going to have a great life and, get a good job someday and, be able to help, a lot of people out there. How's that sound?
Yeah.
Sounds like a slam dunk to me. Carlisle Facette, CTV News, Edmonton.
Edmonton boy who learned to walk again after a stroke in 2020 has met his hero. We introduced you to Toby Lagrazon back in April following a stroke and brain surgery at the age of 8. Toby was unable to move or speak. During his recovery, he was inspired by the story of American basketball player Corey Wiseman. He had a stroke as a teen, then returned to the court. This past spring, CTV News introduced the two virtually. Earlier this month, Toby and Wiseman met in person. They played mini golf and had dinner. Wiseman even surprised Toby with a belated birthday cake.